The neon-drenched spires of Zyros cast their blue-violet glow across the metal surfaces of the Undercity, reflecting like a kaleidoscope against the rain-slicked streets. Elias Frost hunched his shoulders beneath his weathered gray jacket, trying to appear smaller as he navigated through the bustling marketplace. The hood of his jacket, frayed at the edges from years of wear, partially obscured his face, the face of a human, the lowest caste in the Zenturi Empire. "Fresh grilled tentacs! Get your tentacs while they're still squirming," a vendor shouted nearby, waving a skewer of writhing purple appendages. Elias sidestepped the enthusiastic seller, his eyes constantly scanning the crowd. 6 months since his last decent shipping contract. 6 months of odd jobs, sleeping in his docked ship, and scraping together enough credits to keep the life support systems running. The unpaid docking fees were piling up, and the port authorities were getting impatient. He needed a break, a big score. Just one lucrative shipping contract to get back on his feet. "You there! Human!" a metallic voice called out. Elias turned to see a hovering service droid, its antiquated silver plating scratched and dented. "The merchant Bazak requires cargo transport to the Rigel outpost. Interested?" Elias's heart quickened. "Legitimate cargo?" he asked, cautiously. The last thing he needed was another stint in a Zenturi holding cell for transporting contraband. The droid's optical sensors flickered. "Mostly legitimate." "I don't do mostly anymore," Elias replied, though his stomach tightened at the prospect of turning down work. "Official manifests are nothing." "Your choice, human," the droid responded, already turning away to find a more willing transporter. Elias cursed under his breath. He was trying to go straight, to find legitimate work, but the Zenturi Empire made it nearly impossible for humans to secure reputable contracts. 3 centuries after humans had expanded into the stars, they found themselves at the bottom of an alien caste system that relegated them to the most dangerous, lowest-paying jobs. He pushed deeper into the crowded market, the cacophony of alien languages and the scent of exotic foods filling his senses. Street vendors lined the narrow passageways, their stalls illuminated by strips of cheap lighting. Above, the occasional gap in the undercity ceiling revealed glimpses of the upper levels, gleaming towers where the Zenturi elite resided, far removed from the grime and struggle below. The path ahead suddenly cleared as pedestrians scattered, pressing themselves against the walls of the narrow street. Elias looked up to see a sleek, silver limousine hovering a meter above the ground, its polished surface reflecting the neon lights as it glided through the market with casual disregard for those forced to make way. "Make way for high caste," a mechanized voice announced from the vehicle. Elias pressed himself against a vendor's stall, but not quickly enough. The corner of the limousine clipped his shoulder, sending him stumbling backward into a display of crystalline ornaments. The delicate structures toppled and shattered against the ground. "Watch where you're standing, creature!" came a sharp female voice from within the vehicle. The limousine's window slid down, revealing the face of a young Zenturi woman. Her orange-tinted skin glowed almost luminescent in the dim light, accentuated by intricate silver markings that adorned her temples. The unmistakable signs of Zenturi nobility. Her eyes, with vertical pupils like a cat's, narrowed as they fixed on Elias. "Do you know how much this vehicle costs?" she demanded, her voice carrying the distinctive melodic accent of the upper city. "More than your entire species is worth." Elias bit back the retort that rose to his lips. Antagonizing a high-caste Zenturi was tantamount to suicide. Instead, he bowed his head in the expected gesture of deference. "My apologies, honored one," he murmured, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. The Zenturi woman scoffed. "Creatures of your caste should know their place," she said, then addressed her driver. "Continue. I'm already late." As the limousine began to glide forward, something small and metallic fell from the window, landing with a soft clink on the street. Elias glanced at the retreating vehicle, then quickly scooped up the object before anyone else noticed. It was an octagonal device, about the size of his palm, made of a material he didn't recognize. Its surface was etched with intricate symbols that seemed to shift and change as he examined them. A soft blue light pulsed from within, casting a faint glow on his face. "Hey, you break, you pay!" the vendor behind him shouted, gesturing at the shattered crystals. Elias quickly pocketed the strange octagonal device. "I didn't break anything. Your shelf was unstable," he replied, backing away. "Take it up with the limousine owner if you want compensation." The vendor, a four-armed Zolarian, made a rude gesture with two of his hands. "Humans! Always making excuses." Elias turned and hurried away, his hand instinctively checking that the octagonal device was secure in his pocket. Whatever it was, it looked valuable. Perhaps valuable enough to pay off his docking fees and buy him some time. As he navigated the crowded streets, heading toward the cheaper section of the spaceport where his ship was docked, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Twice he doubled back, taking random turns through the labyrinthine market, but saw nothing suspicious among the diverse crowd of aliens and androids. Still, years of smuggling had taught him to trust his instincts. Someone was following him. He ducked into a narrow alleyway, pressing himself into a shadowed alcove, and waited. 3 figures in gray cloaks passed by the entrance, moving with the methodical precision that marked them as something other than casual market-goers. "Vexari," Elias whispered to himself, recognizing the distinctive gait of the genetically modified enforcers that served the highest echelons of Zenturi society. What could they possibly want with him? His hand moved to his pocket, feeling the outline of the octagonal device. Perhaps his find was more significant than he'd initially thought. When the Vexari had passed, Elias emerged from his hiding place and took an alternative route through the Undercity. He needed to reach his ship, but first, he needed information. And in Zyros, information had a price, but also a location. The lower Archives district was quieter than the market, its narrow streets lined with antiquated data repositories and the shops of information brokers. Here, away from the main thoroughfares. The Undercity ceiling hung lower, creating an atmosphere of perpetual twilight, broken only by the occasional illuminated sign. Elias approached a small shop wedged between 2 larger establishments. The sign above the door simply read, "Cultural Preservation," in several languages. He pushed open the door, triggering a soft chime. The interior was cluttered with artifacts from dozens of worlds. Physical books with actual paper pages, ancient data crystals, holographic displays showing rotating images of archaeological sites. Behind a counter stacked with more artifacts stood a male Zanturi, older than most Elias had encountered. His orange skin faded to a pale amber with age. "Toran," Elias said by way of greeting. The old Zanturi looked up, his cat-like eyes widening slightly. "Elias Frost. I was beginning to think you'd found legitimate employment." "I'm trying," Elias replied with a wry smile. "But legitimacy doesn't pay well in this empire." Toran gestured for Elias to approach. Unlike most of his kind, Toran didn't seem to hold the typical Zanturi disdain for humans. If anything, he appeared genuinely interested in all species and their cultural artifacts, hence his self-appointed title of cultural preservationist. "What brings you to my humble establishment?" Toran asked. "I doubt you're here to purchase a first-edition copy of Zenturi philosophical treatises." Elias glanced around to ensure they were alone, then carefully removed the octagonal device from his pocket and placed it on the counter. "I need to know what this is." Toran's casual demeanor vanished instantly. His elongated fingers hovered over the device without touching it, and his vertical pupils dilated to near circles, a sign of extreme emotion in Zanturi. "Where did you get this?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "It fell from a limousine in the market," Elias explained, suddenly uneasy. "Is it valuable?" "Valuable?" Toran repeated, shaking his head. Elias, this isn't about value. This is about history. Our history. Human and Xantori both. The old alien reached beneath his counter and produced a small scanner. He passed it over the device, and holographic symbols appeared in the air above it. It's authentic, he murmured, more to himself than to Elias. After all this time. What is it? Elias pressed, growing impatient. Toran looked up, his expression grave. It's called a keystone, one of 7 created during the Dawn Era, over 5 millennia ago. They're mentioned in the oldest Xantori texts, but most scholars consider them mythical. And what does it do? According to legend, when all 7 keystones are brought together in the inner sanctum, they reveal the truth of the first night, the original communion between humans and Xantori. Elias frowned. That's impossible. Humans only encountered the Xantori 3 centuries ago when we expanded beyond our solar system. Toran's lips curled into a smile that held both sadness and knowledge. That is the official history. Yes. But the keystones tell a different story, one that the High Council has worked very hard to erase. Before Elias could press for more information, the shop's chime sounded again. Both men turned to see 3 gray-cloaked figures entering the shop. Their faces were obscured by hoods, but their movements were unmistakably Vexari. Find another exit, Toran hissed, sweeping the keystone back into Elias's hand. Take the tunnels beneath the shop. I'll delay them. But... Go, Toran insisted, already moving to intercept the Vexari. The Temple of First Light, beneath the old market district. Find it. Elias hesitated only a moment before slipping behind the counter and through a concealed door that Toran had unlocked with a swift movement. The last thing he heard as the door closed behind him was Toran's voice, artificially cheerful. Welcome, honored enforcers. How may I assist you today? The passage beyond was narrow and dimly lit by strips of bioluminescent fungi that grew along the ceiling. Elias moved quickly, guided by the faint blue glow of the keystone in his hand. The tunnels were ancient, their walls carved from the bedrock of Xyros itself, predating the modern city above. He had no idea where he was going, but the keystone seemed to pulse more brightly when he took certain turns, as if guiding him. After what felt like hours of navigating the maze-like passages, he emerged into a vast underground chamber that took his breath away. The Temple of First Light stood before him, its white stone columns rising to support a dome ceiling that seemed to capture and amplify the faint luminescence from the fungi. The walls were covered in intricate bas-reliefs, depicting figures that appeared to be both human and Xantori, working together to build great structures, to navigate ships among the stars, to perform rituals of communion. Impossible, Elias whispered, approaching one of the reliefs. He traced his fingers over the carved image of a human and a Xantori standing together, hands joined, beneath what appeared to be 7 octagonal symbols, keystones. The keystone in his hand pulsed more intensely, and he felt drawn to the center of the temple where a circular platform stood, 7 pedestals arranged in a ring around its edge. Without fully understanding why, Elias placed the keystone on the nearest pedestal. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Blue light erupted from the keystone, illuminating the entire temple. The symbols on its surface shifted and rearranged themselves before projecting outward in a holographic display that filled the chamber. Elias found himself immersed in visions, memories that weren't his own. He saw humans and Xantori working side by side to build the first settlements on Xyros. He witnessed ceremonies of communion between the 2 species, heard fragments of an ancient language shared between them, and he saw the creation of the 7 keystones, infused with the combined psychic energy of both species, designed to preserve the truth should it ever be threatened. The vision shifted, showing conflict, betrayal, a schism between factions of both species. Then came systematic erasure, the destruction of records, the rewriting of history, the genetic modification of Zanturi to create the Vexari who would enforce the new order. The truth of the ancient alliance between humans and Zanturi was buried, replaced by an artificial hierarchy with humans at the bottom. As suddenly as they had appeared, the visions vanished. Elias found himself on his knees, gasping for breath. The keystone, once again inert on its pedestal. But the knowledge remained, burning in his mind like a revelation. "Now you understand," came a voice from behind him. Elias spun around to see the Zanturi woman from the limousine standing at the temple entrance. Gone was the haughty disdain. In its place was an expression of wonder mixed with apprehension. "You," Elias said, rising to his feet. "This belongs to you, I presume." The woman approached cautiously. "My name is Sunri, and no, the keystone doesn't belong to me or to you. It belongs to both our peoples, a shared heritage we've been denied." "How did you find me?" "I felt the keystone's activation," she explained, tapping her temple where the silver markings glowed faintly. "These aren't just decorative. In certain bloodlines, the connection to the ancient communion remains stronger." Elias regarded her suspiciously. "If you know about the keystones, then you know what they reveal. Why would a high caste Zanturi want that truth exposed? It would undermine your entire social order." Sunri's expression hardened. "Because that social order is built on lies. Because my father, High Counselor Valen, is being manipulated by those who benefit from those lies. And because I've spent years searching for the keystones, only to have one literally fall into your lap." Before Elias could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed from the passage he had used. Sunri's eyes widened. "Vexari," she whispered. "They must have followed me." Elias grabbed the keystone from its pedestal. "Is there another way out?" Sunri nodded and pointed to a narrow archway on the far side of the temple. "The ancestral harbor. But we need to hurry." They sprinted across the temple floor as the first gray-cloaked figures emerged from the passage. Energy weapons discharged, sending bolts of crackling light that scorched the ancient stone where they struck. "Stop them!" a mechanized voice commanded. "Lord Krell wants the keystone intact." Elias and Sunri ducked through the archway and into another passage, this one sloping downward. The walls here were different, not carved stone, but what appeared to be the hull of an ancient spacecraft, its metal surfaces etched with the same shifting symbols as the keystone. "What is this place?" Elias asked as they ran. "A shipyard from the Dawn era," Sunri replied, "hidden when the schism occurred." The passage opened into an enormous cavern where dozens of ships sat in silent repose. Unlike modern Zanturi vessels with their sleek, angular designs, these ships were organic in appearance, their hulls shaped like massive seashells that spiraled inward toward their centers. "They're beautiful," Elias murmured. "And functional," Sunri said, leading him toward the nearest vessel. The designs were a collaboration between human engineers and Zanturi biologists, living metal, shaped by thought and will. As they approached the ship, a ramp extended from its side, responding to Sunri's presence. Inside, the interior was surprisingly spacious, with control interfaces that seemed to grow organically from the walls and floor. "Can you fly this?" Elias asked, as they heard the Vexari entering the cavern behind them. Sunri placed her hand on what appeared to be the main control panel. "Theoretically, the royal bloodline retains some genetic memory of the Communion-era technologies. But I've never actually—" Her words were cut off as the ship hummed to life, its systems responding to her touch. Lights flickered on throughout the cabin, and the curved walls became transparent, offering a 360-degree view of the cavern. "Impressive," Elias said. "But can it get us out of here?" Energy bolts from Vexari weapons struck the ship's hull, dissipating harmlessly against the living metal. Sunri's fingers danced across the control interface, and the ship began to rise, hovering above the cavern floor. There should be an exit somewhere, she murmured, scanning the cavern walls. The ancestral ships would have needed a way to reach orbit. Elias pointed upward, where a section of the cavern ceiling appeared different from the surrounding rock. There. It looks like a hatch or barrier of some kind. Sunri directed the ship upward, but its movements were erratic, responding sluggishly to her commands. I can't maintain proper control, she admitted, frustration evident in her voice. Elias studied the control interface. It was unlike any ship he'd piloted before, but certain principles remained universal. Let me try, he suggested. Sunri hesitated, then stepped aside. A human piloting an ancestral ship? This hasn't happened in 5 millennia. Elias placed his hands on the interface, expecting resistance. Instead, the ship seemed to welcome his touch, the controls becoming more responsive, almost eager. He guided the vessel upward with increasing confidence, approaching the section of ceiling he had identified. We need to open that hatch, he said. Sunri pointed to a recessed panel near the control interface. Place the keystone there. Elias removed the octagonal device from his pocket and set it into the panel. Immediately, blue light spread from the keystone throughout the ship's systems. Above them, the ceiling section began to retract, revealing a vertical shaft that led upward through the bedrock of Zyros. Hold on, Elias warned as he accelerated the ship upward into the shaft. The ascent was rapid, the ancient vessel moving with surprising speed, once properly controlled. Behind them, Elias glimpsed the Vexari attempting to activate other ships in the cavern, but without success. They can't follow, Sunri observed. The ships won't respond to them. The Vexari were created after the schism. They lack the genetic resonance with the ancestral technology. The shaft seemed endless, twisting through the layers of Zyros like the burrow of some enormous creature. Finally, they emerged into open air, not within the confines of the city, as Elias had expected, but beyond its outskirts, in a desolate region where the planet's natural landscape remained visible. Head for orbit, Sunri instructed urgently. The Vexari will alert air defense systems. We need to get beyond their range. Elias complied, pushing the ancient ship to accelerate upward. The vessel responded eagerly, its living metal hull adapting to the changing atmospheric conditions as they climbed higher. Soon, the curve of the planet became visible below them, the sprawling metropolis of Zyros just one bright spot on the otherwise dimly lit surface. We made it, Elias breathed, allowing himself to relax slightly. But what now? Where do we go from here? Sunri retrieved the keystone from its panel, studying it thoughtfully. The keystone showed you visions, didn't it? Information about the other keystone's locations? Elias nodded. Fragments, images. I saw a facility on an asteroid, some kind of research outpost, and faces, scholars. I think studying the keystones. The Historical Research Academy, Sunri said with growing excitement. It's located on a planetoid in the Shattered Belt. If anyone would know about the other keystones, it would be Mentor Kalen. He's dedicated his life to studying the Dawn Era. A warning signal pulsed through the ship's systems. On the view screen, 6 vessels appeared, rising from Zyros in pursuit. Their designs were sleek and predatory, modern Vexari patrol ships, armed and dangerous. They're faster than us, Elias noted grimly. We won't reach the Shattered Belt before they intercept. Sunri's expression hardened with determination. Then, we'll have to outmaneuver them. You're a pilot. Show me what you can do. Elias grinned despite the danger. I'm not just a pilot. I'm a smuggler, or I was. And no one chases a smuggler through the Zyros skylanes and catches them. He banked the ancient vessel sharply, diving back toward the planet's atmosphere. The Vexari ships followed, adjusting their course to match his descent. What are you doing? Sunri demanded. We need to get to the Shattered Belt. We will, Elias assured her. But first, we're going to thin out our pursuers. He guided the ship into the upper layers of Zyros's urban sprawl, weaving between the towering spires of the city's highest structures. The Vexari ships followed, their superior speed forcing them to constantly adjust their course to avoid collisions. Elias spotted what he was looking for: a narrow gap between two massive transport conduits that connected different sections of the city. The space was barely wide enough for their ship to pass through. "Hold on," he warned again, then accelerated directly toward the gap. At the last possible moment, he rotated the ship 90 degrees and slipped between the conduits. Behind them, two of the Vexari vessels attempted to follow, but misjudged the timing. One clipped the edge of a conduit and spiraled out of control, while the other pulled up too late and collided with a support strut. "Four left," Elias announced, already planning his next move. He piloted the ship in a complex series of maneuvers through the urban canyons of Zyros, using his intimate knowledge of the city's layout to his advantage. The Vexari pilots were skilled, but they were trained for open-space combat, not the intricate dance of near misses and split-second decisions that was urban flying. Another Vexari ship misjudged a turn and crashed into a neon advertising billboard. A fourth was disabled when Elias led it through the exhaust plume of a ascending cargo hauler, its systems overloading from the sudden heat surge. "Two to go," Elias said, sweat beading on his forehead as he concentrated on his flying. "And they're the best of the bunch." The remaining Vexari ships had adapted to his tactics, maintaining a safer distance while still keeping pace. As Elias guided their vessel back toward open sky, the pursuers launched a series of energy projectiles that tracked their ship's energy signature. "Defensive measures?" Elias asked urgently. Sunri was already working the secondary controls. The ancestral ships were primarily exploration vessels, not warships, but they have some capabilities. She activated a system that caused the ship's hull to pulse with waves of blue energy. The incoming projectiles detonated prematurely as they encountered the energy field, their explosions harmlessly distant. "Not bad for 5,000-year-old technology," Elias remarked as he pushed the ship beyond Zyros's atmosphere once more. "Now, let's see if we can lose them in the Shattered Belt." The Shattered Belt was a vast field of asteroids and debris that orbited Zyros's sun, the remnants of a planet that had been destroyed in some ancient cataclysm. It was notoriously dangerous to navigate, with unpredictable gravitational eddies and constantly shifting debris patterns. As they approached the belt, Elias had an inspiration. He placed the keystone back in its panel on the control interface. If this ship and the keystone are from the same era, maybe. The keystone pulsed with blue light that spread throughout the ship's systems. On the view screen, certain paths through the asteroid field began to glow with the same blue luminescence, safe passages that would have been invisible otherwise. The ancestral ships use the keystones as navigation aids, Sunri realized. They can reveal paths through chaotic space that would be impossible to calculate conventionally. Elias guided their vessel into the Shattered Belt, following the blue-lit pathways. Behind them, the Vexari ships hesitated at the belt's edge, then followed, but without the keystone's guidance. One ship immediately collided with a tumbling asteroid, its shields failing under the impact. The final pursuer continued more cautiously, but soon found itself in a gravitational eddy that pulled it deeper into the belt, away from their path. "We're clear," Elias announced, allowing himself to relax at last. He turned to Sunri with a grin. "Not bad for a creature of my caste, huh?" Sunri had the grace to look embarrassed. "About that, I was raised to believe the caste system was natural and right. It's only recently that I've begun to question it, to seek out the truth." "What changed?" She touched the silver markings on her temples. "Dreams, visions, fragments of memories that couldn't possibly be mine. I started researching in secret, piecing together references to the Dawn Era and the Keystones. My father noticed my interest and tried to discourage it, which only convinced me I was onto something important. Elias studied her thoughtfully. And now? Now that you've seen what the keystone revealed? Now I'm certain, Sunri said firmly. Our peoples were meant to be allies. Equals. The separation is artificial, a construct created by those who sought power after the schism. And I intend to expose that truth, whatever the cost. The planetoid that housed the Historical Research Academy appeared ahead of them, a small, rocky body at the center of the shattered belt. Unlike most installations in the Zenturi Empire, which favored sleek, technological aesthetics, the Academy was built to resemble ancient architecture, with dome structures and colonnaded walkways visible even from orbit. As they descended toward the landing pad, Elias noticed something unusual. There are no ships docked here. If this is a research center, shouldn't there be supply vessels, transport shuttles? Sunri frowned. You're right, it's too quiet. They landed cautiously, the ancestral ship settling onto the pad with barely a sound. The surrounding complex remained silent, showing no signs of activity or life. I don't like this, Elias muttered as they prepared to disembark. It feels like a trap. Or something happened to the Academy, Sunri suggested. Let's proceed carefully. They exited the ship, the keystone safely in Elias's pocket once more. The air on the planetoid was thin, but breathable, maintained by ancient atmospheric generators that hummed softly in the background. The buildings of the Academy showed signs of recent habitation, personal items left on desks, half-finished meals in the dining area, but no people. It's as if everyone just vanished, Sunri whispered, her voice carrying in the eerie silence. They made their way to the central structure, a large domed building that housed the main research facilities. The doors stood open, and inside, they found a vast circular chamber with 7 pedestals, arranged in a pattern identical to the one in the Temple of First Light. The inner sanctum, Elias breathed, recognizing it from his visions. A soft shuffling sound came from the shadows at the edge of the chamber. Both Elias and Sunri tensed, ready for a possible threat. Who enters the sanctum? A quavering voice asked. An elderly Zenturi emerged from the shadows. His orange skin faded to a pale yellow with extreme age. He leaned heavily on a staff, and his eyes were clouded, suggesting partial blindness. Despite his frail appearance, there was an aura of dignity and knowledge about him. Mentor Kalen? Sunri ventured. The old Zenturi tilted his head. The voice of youth, and not alone. He shuffled forward, squinting. A human companion? Interesting. Very interesting. We've come seeking information about the keystones, Elias explained, removing the octagonal device from his pocket. We found one. Mentor Kalen's clouded eyes widened. After all this time, he whispered, echoing Toran's words. Bring it closer, please. Elias approached cautiously, holding out the keystone. The elderly scholar didn't take it, but passed his hand over its surface, feeling the shifting symbols with his fingertips. The first keystone, he confirmed. The beacon that calls to the others. He turned his face toward Sunri. And you, young one, you bear the ancestral markings. Royal blood. Sunri nodded, then realizing he couldn't see clearly, added, Yes, I am Sunri, daughter of High Counselor Valen. Mentor Kalen chuckled dryly. Of course you are. The echoes seek their own, generation after generation. He gestured toward the chamber's center. Come, both of you. There is little time. They followed him to the ring of pedestals. Mentor Kalen moved to a wall panel and pressed a sequence of symbols. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a hidden compartment from which he retrieved a second keystone. Identical to the first, but with different symbols etched on its surface. The second keystone, he explained. The Rememberer. I have protected it for 80 years, waiting for the day when the first would be found. He handed it to Sunri. Now, you must complete what was begun 5 millennia ago. What happened here? Elias asked, gesturing to the empty academy. Where is everyone? Mentor Kalen's expression grew somber. Lord Krell's Vexari came 2 days ago. Those who resisted were killed. The rest were taken for re-education. I escaped only because I know this facility's secrets better than anyone. He pointed his staff at the pedestals. Place the keystones, quickly. We may already be too late. Elias and Sunri exchanged glances, then moved to the pedestals. Elias placed the first keystone on the nearest one, while Sunri set the second on the adjacent pedestal. Both keystones immediately began to pulse with blue light, their symbols shifting more rapidly. Now we wait, Mentor Kalen said. The first calls to the others. If any still exist, they will answer. And if they don't? Elias asked. The old scholar's smile was sad. Then the truth remains buried, and the cycle of separation continues for another age. A low, rumbling sound vibrated through the chamber. Dust fell from the dome ceiling as the entire structure shook. What's happening? Sunri asked, alarmed. Mentor Kalen tilted his head, listening. Ships. Many ships. They've found us. On the surface above, 2 fleets converged on the planetoid. One consisted of the distinctive, angular vessels of the Vexari, led by a larger command ship. The other bore the insignia of the High Council itself, sleek, golden vessels with the emblem of Zenturi authority. In the command ship, Lord Krell watched the approaching council vessels with narrowed eyes. His gray skin, a mark of Vexari genetic modification, was stretched tight over sharp features. Unlike other Vexari, who served as enforcers and soldiers, Krell had risen to command through cunning and ruthlessness. High Counselor Valen approaches with the council fleet. His second-in-command reported. Krell's thin lips curved in a smile that held no warmth. Excellent. The old fool has played into our hands. When we recover the keystones and eliminate the witnesses, the council will have no choice but to recognize our authority. In the lead council vessel, High Counselor Valen, a distinguished Zenturi with elaborate silver markings, similar to Sunri's, addressed his officers. Our priority is to secure my daughter's safety, he instructed. Lord Krell has exceeded his authority in pursuing her. The keystones, while historically significant, are secondary concerns. What Valen didn't say, what he could barely admit to himself, was the fear that gripped him. The keystones were more than historical artifacts. If the ancient texts were correct, they had the power to reveal truths that would shake the foundations of Zenturi society. Truths that he and his predecessors had worked for generations to suppress. Back in the inner sanctum, the keystone's pulsing light had intensified. Above them, the dome of the chamber became transparent, revealing the 2 fleets in orbit around the planetoid. The Council and the Vexari, Sunri said, recognizing the vessels. My father is here. And Lord Krell, Mentor Kalen added grimly, the architect of so much suffering. Suddenly, 5 beams of blue light streaked across the sky, converging on the sanctum. They passed through the transparent dome and struck the empty pedestals, materializing into the remaining 5 keystones. They answered, Elias breathed in awe. Mentor Kalen nodded, his clouded eyes filled with tears. The cycle continues. The truth will be revealed. The 7 keystones now pulsed in unison, their light growing brighter, more intense. The symbols on their surfaces shifted faster, aligning into patterns that echoed each other. The chamber shook again as ships landed on the surface. The sounds of energy weapons and shouted commands filtered down from above. They're coming, Sunri said, moving closer to Elias. What do we do now? Mentor Kalen stepped into the center of the ring of pedestals. The communion cycle requires representatives of both bloodlines, human and Zenturi. The original echoes who forged the alliance in the Dawn era. He pointed to Elias and Sunri. You are those echoes reborn. You must complete the first night ritual. First night? Elias repeated, confused. What does that entail? The doors to the sanctum burst open. Vexari soldiers poured in, weapons raised, followed by council guards in their golden armor. Behind them came Lord Krell and High Counselor Valen, momentarily united in their pursuit despite their opposing agendas. "Stop them!" Lord Krell commanded. "Secure the keystones!" "Sunri!" High Counselor Valen called out. "Step away from those devices immediately!" Mentor Kalen moved with surprising speed for one so old, positioning himself between the intruders and the pedestals. "You are too late," he announced. "The cycle is already in motion." Lord Krell raised his weapon and fired. The energy bolt struck Mentor Kalen in the chest, sending him crumbling to the floor. "No!" Sunri cried, starting toward him. Elias caught her arm. "We have to complete the ritual," he urged. It's what he wanted. The keystone's light had become almost blindingly intense, filling the chamber with pulsating blue radiance. The symbols on their surfaces now projected outward, creating a dome of holographic text and images that enclosed the pedestals. "What is the first night ritual?" Elias asked urgently, as soldiers from both factions advanced toward them. Sunri's eyes widened with sudden understanding. "The communion of bloodlines," she whispered. "The physical and psychic joining that sealed the original alliance." Before Elias could respond, she pulled him into an embrace at the exact center of the pedestal ring. Their lips met as the 7 keystones reached the peak of their power cycle. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. A wave of psychic energy exploded outward from the joined couple, rippling through the chamber. Every Xanturi and human present, Vexari, council guards, Lord Krell, High Counselor Valen, was struck by the wave and frozen in place, their minds flooded with visions. They saw the truth of the Dawn Era, humans and Xanturi discovering each other, not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals. They witnessed the flourishing of a joint civilization that combined the technological ingenuity of humans with the biological insights of the Xanturi. They experienced the creation of the Keystones, designed to preserve that truth against any attempt to rewrite history. And they saw the schism, the power-hungry factions of both species who sought to establish dominance, who engineered the genetic modifications that would become the Vexari, who systematically erased the evidence of equality and replaced it with the artificial caste system. As the visions faded, the people in the chamber slowly regained their ability to move. Many fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the revelation. Others stood in stunned silence, their worldviews shattered. Lord Krell was the first to recover, his face contorted with rage. "Lies!" he shouted. "Ancestral propaganda! The Keystones are weapons designed to undermine our authority." He raised his weapon again, aiming at Elias and Sunri, who remained embraced at the center of the ring. Before he could fire, another pulse of energy emanated from the Keystones. This one focused solely on him. The energy enveloped Lord Krell, its blue light penetrating his gray skin. As everyone watched in shock, the skin began to peel away, revealing orange Xanturi flesh beneath. The genetic modifications that had transformed him into a Vexari were being reversed, exposing his true nature. Xanturi," High Counselor Valen said in disbelief. "The Vexari are modified Xanturi, not a separate species as we've been led to believe." Lord Krell, now fully reverted to his Xanturi form, collapsed to the floor, his weapon clattering uselessly beside him. The other Vexari soldiers looked at each other in confusion, some already showing signs of the same reversion. High Counselor Valen stepped forward, his expression a complex mixture of emotions as he gazed at his daughter and the human she still held in her arms. "Is it true?" he asked quietly. "All of it?" Sunri nodded. "The Keystones don't lie, Father. They contain the actual memories of our ancestors, preserved through millennia. Humans and Xanturi were meant to be partners, not master and servant." Valen turned to face the assembled soldiers and guards. "Stand down," he commanded. "All of you." The council guards lowered their weapons immediately. The Vexari hesitated, looking to their fallen leader, then slowly followed suit. "The council must be informed," Valen continued. "The full council, not just those of us present. And preparations must be made for a broader announcement to all citizens of the Empire." "They'll resist," one of his officers warned. "The caste system has been in place for centuries. Many benefit from its continuation." Valen's expression hardened with resolve. "Then they will be shown the truth, as we have been. The Keystones have the power to reveal what has been hidden. No propaganda can stand against such direct experience." He approached Elias and Sunri, who had finally separated, though they remained close. "My daughter," he said softly, "I owe you an apology. And you," he added, turning to Elias, "I owe you a debt I can never repay. You have shown me that my life's work has been built on falsehood." "Not entirely," Sunri replied. "You've always sought stability and prosperity for our people. Those goals remain worthy, but now they can be pursued with truth as the foundation, not lies." Valen nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, a new council must be formed, a communion council, with representatives from both bloodlines." He looked at Elias. "Will you serve as the first human representative?" Elias blinked in surprise. "Me? I'm just a cargo pilot, a smuggler, if we're being honest." "You are more than that." Mentor Kalen's voice came weakly from where he lay on the floor. The energy bolt had wounded him severely, but he clung to life. "You are an echo of the first human ambassador. The Keystones recognized you, as they recognized Sunri as the echo of the first Zenturi ambassador." Elias and Sunri helped the elderly scholar to a sitting position. Despite his injury, his clouded eyes were bright with satisfaction. "The cycle is complete," Mentor Kalen said. "After 5,000 years, the truth is free once more. Now it is up to you, all of you, to ensure it remains so." In the days that followed, the revelation spread throughout the Zenturi Empire. The Keystones were transported to major population centers, where millions of citizens experienced the visions firsthand. As High Counselor Valen had predicted, there was resistance from those who benefited most from the caste system, but it crumbled in the face of the undeniable truth revealed by the Keystones. The Vexari, once feared enforcers of the old order, underwent a profound transformation as their genetic modifications were reversed. Many struggled with their new identity and the memories of their actions, but rehabilitation programs were established to help them reintegrate into society. The High Council was dissolved and reformed as the Communion Council, with equal representation from humans and Zenturi. The caste system was not abolished outright. Such a dramatic change would have caused too much societal disruption, but it was fundamentally redefined. Instead of being based on species or birth, castes became functional categories based on contribution and ability, with movement between them not only possible but encouraged. Mentor Kalen, having survived his wounds, became the first keeper of truth, responsible for preserving and teaching the accurate history of human-Zanturi relations. The Historical Research Academy was rebuilt and expanded, becoming a center for cultural exchange and reconciliation. 5 years later, Zyros had been transformed. The stark division between Upper City and Undercity was blurred as mixed neighborhoods developed. Architecture incorporated elements from both human and Zanturi traditions, creating a new aesthetic that celebrated their shared heritage. In Unity Square, formerly the exclusive domain of Zenturi nobility, crowds gathered daily to witness the rotation ceremony, where the 7 keystones were turned in their pedestals, releasing a gentle pulse of revelatory energy that served as a constant reminder of the truth. Elias and Sunri, now married according to both human and Zanturi traditions, walked through the square hand in hand. As communion ambassadors, they had spent the past 5 years traveling throughout the empire, overseeing the peaceful transition to the new order. Now they had returned to Zyros for a special occasion. "Nervous?" Sunri asked, squeezing Elias's hand. He smiled. "A little. It's not every day you introduce the first human Zanturi child in 5 millennia to society." In Sunri's other arm, wrapped in a blanket woven with the symbols of both cultures, their infant daughter slept peacefully. Her skin held a hint of orange, while her hair was distinctly human. The silver markings on her temples were already visible, though they would not fully develop until adolescence. As they approached the central dais where the keystone sat, the crowd parted respectfully. High Counselor Valen, still serving in the Communion Council despite his advanced age, waited to greet them. "My granddaughter," he said warmly as they reached him. "May I?" Sunri carefully transferred the sleeping infant to her father's arms. Valen gazed down at the child with wonder. "She is perfect," he declared, "living proof of what we were meant to be." Around them, 7 pillars of blue light rose from the keystones, reaching toward the sky, a permanent monument to the truth they had revealed. In orbit above, ships from distant human colonies arrived daily, bringing representatives eager to establish relations with the reformed Zanturi Empire. Elias looked out at the diverse crowd, humans and Zanturi, standing together as equals, their faces upturned to watch the blue pillars of light. 5 years ago, he had been a desperate smuggler, scraping by at the bottom of an unjust society. Now, he stood at the center of a peaceful revolution that had transformed millions of lives. "What are you thinking?" Sunri asked, noticing his contemplative expression. Elias smiled and placed his arm around her shoulders. "I'm thinking that sometimes the greatest treasures fall right into your lap when you least expect them." Sunri laughed. "A keystone and a princess? That's quite a windfall for a simple cargo pilot." "The best smuggling run of my career," Elias agreed with a grin. "And I didn't even have to break any laws." Above them, the 7 pillars of light pulsed in unison, visible from space, a beacon calling to distant stars, promising that humans and Zanturi would face the future together, as they were always meant to do.